morning. My name is Steffen Milner, and after that very interesting presentation, interesting, but I got really depressed. Now I have to be also positive. I try also to say that we are doing good things, also good things for economic growth. So it's perhaps going to be a challenge, but at least from EPRA side, we see areas where we can do good things. I'm also very new to that sector. I started at EPRA, it was a little bit over 2 months ago, so very fresh. So I have also fresh eyes to that industry. And we from the EPRA, so we think ourselves a bit like the voice of the listed property sector. And this could be something very trivial to say, but of course when I started, and this was really implicit to me, is that we have real estate everywhere, but it's really a fact that without buildings, there's just nothing working. And this was implicit, and now after those 2 months, it became something very explicit to me, like a kind of epiphany. So I'm going to start with a slide on that. And then very shortly, who we are. Then a little bit on the European listed property sector. Our sector could be and has the potential of being larger. I'm going to explain why this could be interesting, and then a few words of conclusions. This was my epiphany, is that of course that from when you get born to your death, you are exposed to real estate. And this is something I realized then really over the course of those few weeks. Here we have also a few slides. I want to show a few buildings also in that presentation of our EPRA members. And of course, then you get born, then you want to have some leisure. You have an EPRA member, Nibai Rodamco, he's now doing this new redevelopment, retrofitting of Les Halles à Paris. We were just hearing in one of the last slides of ING that we were all getting older, and we have Coffee Nemo now getting strong in nursing homes, retirement homes, I guess. So this is a pretty clever move, as we are perhaps all going to eventually land in one of those nice buildings. And you have in Switzerland, by PSP Swiss Property, a building where we have department stores. So this was just to say, we have everywhere real estate, and this was something that is now really clear to me. EPRA. Well, we have for around 250 billion euro of commercial property represented among our members. Today we are a bit over 200 members. We have of course the property companies on board, but we have of course the investors interested in investing in those companies, the banks talking to those investors, we have the universities doing interesting studies on, for example, sustainability, and our company or our association was established in 1999. At that time we had 3 countries covered, France, UK and the Netherlands, and we had 25 members. Now, as you can see, we have a broader range of countries covered, 27 countries. Our mission is pretty straightforward. We are here to promote, develop and represent the interest of the listed property sector in Europe. And we do that through 3 main pillars. We have our reporting and regulation team. We have also people dealing with research and investor outreach. And then our CEO, Philippe Charles, and some others are doing events. Like last week, we were inviting our CEOs to have an interesting brainstorming on how we can move forward in that field. We have a big EPRA conference. This is going to be in Berlin this year in September. And we, from the reporting side, we follow, of course, EU legislation. We issue best practice recommendation. This is followed more and more by our members. We work on taxation revision and on financial reporting. Now we are here in Belgium. We have 8 members currently on board. The 2 Bell 20 listed companies, Coffee Nemo BEFIMO, and as you can see, the largest chunk of our members are still the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and France. Now, the European commercial sector. Here, this is just to set the stage. Broad range of activities, everything that has to do with property. So of course you have the people doing brick and mortars, property developments, redevelopment, retrofitting. You have the people interested in rental income generation with a view to have growth in the medium and the long term. And then you can invest and we can focus on residential, offices, retail and industrial property. And then of course you have subsets of that in hotels, leisure, education, healthcare, or even infrastructure. Now we like to think of ourselves of being, if you want, la crème de la crème, the best in class in the listed real estate sectors. Here we provide three key things. Access to an impressive range of properties, both for the retail and the institutional investors. We have also second, liquidity. It's a liquid investment in an illiquid market, as you know. It's easy to get in and out with our companies. And with other listed companies like Novartis, Nestlé, ThyssenKrupp, we have to be transparent on what we are doing. This is in turn helpful to investors to make sound decisions and to reward us if they work well, our companies, or if there's some suboptimal developments, they can, beat us. It's also nice to improve quality and dynamism of the underlying built environment. And now we also, because of this transparency that is put on us, we, and this is also, we saw that through recent research, kind of leaders in sustainability issues. And of course, there's lots to remain to be done, but we have more and more examples where we see that thanks to the transparency, thanks that we have to show what we are doing openly, that in the field of sustainability, energy efficiency, we move forward. Of course, this is also interesting to the governments with the regular dividends that are paid by our companies and then taxed. This offer a tax revenue to them. And we see, of course, that this is also a way, the listed property sector, to have access to top quality property, something that you would not be able normally as a single man to do. You can buy a chunk of a very interesting building or a very interesting portfolio. It's also quite interesting through the diversification you have. You can choose your sector. Am I going to try to invest more in hotels, in malls? Are they as empty as we saw there in China? From the feedback we received, some of the malls in Europe, many of them are performing quite nicely right now. And of course you have attractive cash flow with strong past long-term performances. And this is of course a proxy for direct property investment. Now if I take two key attributes of the listed sector, liquidity and transparency. Here a slide on liquidity. As you see from that slide, we have, I took a sample of our EPRA members. We have a high velocity, a high turnout of the shares traded. So on average, you had for around 75 billion euro of those shares traded. So there were people selling and people buying. So this is liquid and you have lots of activity in those shares. On the right, this is also to show that we try to, our sector is accounting approximately for 3% of the real estate market value overall. And the total value of trade of listed property company is close, not matching, but it's close to the traded value of all direct properties, those 3%. Now the other attribute that is interesting is transparency. Here we see an adoption rate of our company to our BPR. In 2011, you saw that we have also two Belgian companies down here taking on board our best practice recommendation. You saw on the graph here that year on year, you have a picking up from those companies to those best practice recommendation. And of course, this is helping the industry. This is helping the investors getting a clear picture of what they are doing. Now, if I take those two things, there was something very actual. Last week, we had EPRA replied to an EU consultation. Deadline was last Friday on energy efficiency in buildings. And of course, here, EPRA, we think we have a role to play. Transparency, this is helping to make a point here. Liquidity, also. You see that the EU is consulting right now on the financial support for energy efficiency in those buildings. Why? Because we are not moving on the right direction with regard to the track for the 2020 energy efficiency track. We are in fact moving almost the opposite direction. As you can see, the building sector is putting, you have 40% of the final energy consumption is done in houses, in offices, in shops and others. And you have 35% of the greenhouse gas emission is coming also from the property sector. And so, of course, for the EU and for us, we see that we are, that sector, the second untapped cost-effective potential for energy savings after the energy sector. So, of course, this is important to us. There's lots of retrofitting, renewal that we can do here to be better. So we wrote to the Commission last week to say, well, thanks for the consultation. We think we have a role to play in that area. We are going also to try to see them and to make the point for our industry. We stated that thanks to our transparency requirements, we provide a great deal of information to the investors on the sustainability aspect of buildings. In order to get traction in that energy efficiency field, one key input we had to make in that presentation is that it would be helpful to set proper regulatory conditions to our sector to grow in Europe. And as of today, it's not really the case, as we're going to see in a few slides. It's not the case. We have fragmentation. We have the single market is not really playing as it should be in our sector. So here we have something to do. So we made some proposals to them. Also better coordination, because let's say we have now the IFMD directive, so the funds. You know, if in one side of the Commission you are doing something to help the sector, and on the other side you have something that could be perceived as a threat, you know, they have to talk together in order to get a nice outcome. Out of the listed property sector, you have a subset, a successful subset, the REITs. In Europe, actually, you have 8 countries that have REITs, so it's a kind of market brand. It started in the 60s in the US. In Belgium, they are called the SICAFI. You have the SIC in France, the G-REIT in Germany. In the Netherlands, it's the FBIs. They have different legal structures. They have different regulatory systems and business models. And here, we have to say that the REIT term is currently very unhelpful, because in the REIT term, you have the I that stands for investment and the T for trust. And the regulators, they have an issue in understanding that REITs, like those EPRA member REITs, are real operating business. It's not virtual. They are not doing just nothing or playing with finance. They are doing real concrete buildings that you can picture, go in and have nice time in. So this is something we have to say, that the concept of REIT, so it's a 50 years old concept, is now a bit unhelpful when we are talking to the regulators. And here we have to make sure that the listed real estate companies are real businesses. So what we are? First of all, we are major developers. Here are a few examples. I mean, Land Securities in the UK, they completed more development projects in 2009 and 2011 than Bouygues or Skanska. We are having, as I told you, operating businesses. Hammerson has 2,700 individual lease contracts with tenants. and Segro more than 1,600 customers. We have Clépierre in France that is operating real department stores and malls, 350 of them, and they have 18,000 commercial lease contracts. We are customer focused. British Land, they have over registered 250 million visitors with close to £5 billion annually spent in those stores. And those companies, they were just not created yesterday. They are here also for the long term. In addition, we think that those companies are also major employers, directly and indirect. They invest also in long-term projects. It's not just to buy something and get rid of the house the next day. And they are part of the general equity sector. Now we have soon the Olympics starting in London. And here a success story in East London. This is the Westfield Stratford city. It's a very large new urban development in this a bit suboptimal part of London. Work is still ongoing. It started in 2007. The work is going to be ended in 2020. The retail part is open in time for the Olympics. You have lots of shops, you have lots of restaurants, you have hotels, screen cinemas. And the whole thing has lots of benefits all around that. Here a few bullet points. I'm not going to each of them, but on the sustainability front, the developers were keen to make here a difference. Then employment, we got some numbers, interesting numbers of the people employed for the whole development. And then as a conclusion, here the benefits for the economy, you have lots of permanent jobs that were created. You are going to have interesting tax revenues for the states. You have this Newham part that is going to see prettier. And for the whole neighborhood, the quality of life is going to get improved in time for the Olympics. Now growing the sector. In that a bit crowded slide, I just want to show things. This red figure is to say that in developed Europe, we have, out of all the listed companies, you have less than 3% that are directed to the listed real estate. And then you have less than 4% if you want to invest in properties. Out of the underlying real estate of more than 7 trillion US billion, you can only choose 4% of that set through listed property. If you see in North America or in Asia, those numbers are the double, are much higher. So here we really have the need and the opportunity to grow our European sector. In the next slide, I show you a bit the same story. If we take the EPRA total index, you see the low line here. On average, Europe has always been, now throughout the year, the smallest region. And here we see some potential to grow. Why are we not having the size we think we should have? Well, we have those persistent discounts to NAV. In some cases, we have free float restrictions. We have, of course, the investor culture. Many of them, perhaps they prefer a direct control and they don't want to be bothered on the daily by the volatility that our shares are showing. We have, of course, regulatory hurdles. And of course, one of the main topics is fragmentation. Europe is a combination of 27 states, and they do not have all the same direction. And here we can improve this single market, we think, for our sector as a whole, which is not currently totally performing well to our industry. Now, the European listed sector, as I told you, is very small compared to the other regions of the world. In Germany, for example, it's almost non-existent. So here we are making efforts to try to grow the sector, as we think it could contribute to jobs and growth. So what we want to do is encourage best-in-class, la crème de la crème, REIT legislation throughout Europe. Also introduce mutual recognition principle for cross-border REIT investments. We want also to encourage the OECD model on REITs. And we want to establish a global acceptance of corporate operating REITs as a real economic business, not as a passive fund. So this is also one of the messages we want to, and we have to repeat all the time, that we are real operating companies. Now a few current regulatory issues we are currently dealing with. IFMD, so that defines here funds, Alternative Investment Funds Directive. Here we think that we are not part of that directive. So for us it's not something that we have to concentrate on it too much. But still we have, because the scope is not totally clear yet. So we have to be sure not to be in that directive. We are checking what's going on the pension funds field. On EU REITs, we have also something ongoing. Shadow banking, a green paper is out. It's a catch-all kind of regulation. We have to check is it going to have an impact on us, this shadow banking. And I told you in the slide previously on energy efficiency in buildings, we have those consultations ongoing. Our reply also, we had replied with IFMD, and we are now currently trying to tour some of the capitals in France, in Germany, in the UK, in Austria, in Italy, to make our point very clear that we do not see ourselves part of the IFMD. My conclusions? Well, the government, what they want capital flow into the built environment. They want economic stability. They want regular tax receipts. And the investors, they want cash flow. They want a long-term correlation to real estate. Liquidity is important. Quality management and transparency of our EPRA companies, and good performances. And EPRA and our members are working toward achieving those goals. If you have contact, if you want to contact us, or my boss, Garrett Lewis, you have here, you can contact EPRA. We are very close to Place Lux, very easy to reach, and would be delighted to talk to you when you have a minute. Thank you very much.